Hello everyone, my name's Tom and welcome to this week's Thought for the Week. This is a week when actually it's been exactly 7 years since I left home for the first time and travelled to the Big Smoke to Exeter from Cornwall to start my university career. And I'm pretty sentimental, so there have been several moments over the past week or two when I found myself just lost in a river of a sea of nostalgic memories, thinking of what life used to be like when I was a student 7 years ago. And I'm sure many of you watching are similar to me in this too. Lots of us look back and get lost in memories of the good old days or memories of easier times. And all of that got me thinking, what does the Bible say about nostalgia? Well, I think the Bible tells us that there is a good and a bad side to nostalgia. Briefly, the good side to nostalgia is that it's important to look on your past, to see what God has done, how God has blessed you, how God has used you, and use that as an encouragement for the present and for the future. You find that pattern throughout the book of Psalms, actually, a constant calling to remember what God has done in the past, to not fall into traps in the present, and to do great things for God in the present and the future. But often, if you're anything like me, when you look at your past, when you gaze at your past, you're doing it simply because you're not content with the present day. Something bad happens to you, or you're facing a stressful situation at work or wherever, and you just think to yourself, oh, if only I was 12 years old or 20 or 30 years old again, when I had no responsibility and life was easier. I just wish I could go back to that time. And that is a bad side of nostalgia. Here's how Greg Morse, a writer for Desiring God, describes this bad nostalgia. He says that while the past is an exquisite place to visit, it is a menacing place to live. And that's because looking back on the past and living in the past is totally unfulfilling. It's a way of escaping the present, and actually living in the present and looking forward to the future in some ways is a really important part of being a Christian. Let me give you 2 reasons why that is the case. The first one is that time is valuable. The time that we've been given in the present is a gift from God. In Ephesians 5 verse 16, we're told that we need to make the most of our time. So what are you going to do with that time? Here's what Paul also writes in Ephesians 2, chapter 2, verse 10. He says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has prepared in advance for us to do." So what Paul is saying there is that there is always a way to bring God glory in the present, in the here and now. God has prepared good works for you as a Christian to do right now, and those works will bring him glory. So that's my first encouragement to you when it comes to having a nostalgia hit. Don't waste the opportunity God has given you to do good works by constantly living in the past. God has prepared you for so much more than that. The second reason why this bad nostalgia isn't worth your time is because the best is yet to come for the Christian. It doesn't matter how good the good old days were or how easy the easiest times in your life have been. The best days for Christians are still to come. Here's what Paul writes in Philippians chapter 3, verses 13-14. He says, "Forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." You see, there is a day coming when Christians shall be in heaven together, worshipping God. We'll be in the presence of the one who loves us, who has saved us from our sin through his death and his resurrection. We'll see Jesus face to face. There'll be no more tears, no more death, no more suffering, and our faces will be radiant from the glory of God. Those will be the best days. Those will be the good present days that we can look at because we'll be living them all the time. As Psalm 84 verse 10 tells us, better is one day in God's house in heaven in his presence than 1,000 days elsewhere, 1,000 of the best days here on earth. So what of nostalgia for the Christian then? Well, let's be nostalgic. Let's think of our days at university or our days in previous jobs, days as in our youth. But let's do that in the right way. Let's use them as an encouragement to live for now. My hope and prayer for every Christian is that you will visit your past, but you won't live in it. That your past will be like a springboard from which you are spurred on and encouraged to do good works that God has prepared for you to do in the here and now. That the past won't be a swimming pool that you dive into and spend way too long in and become all wrinkly. That's not what we want at all. May God bless you this week.